Hey everyone, welcome to another video from Please Tell Me the Truth Ministries. Jeremy and I, we do our own podcast. It's called Wrestling with God. And today we talked about the epistles, or the letters, and the hermeneutics, which is a fancy word for Bible interpretation or understanding of them. So Jeremy, what epistle did we dive into? And tell them the 4 or 3 questions that we talked about in the podcast.
Yeah, so with reading epistles, kind of how we approach them and have been told to approach them is asking a couple questions. And so the first one is, who's writing this epistle? So it's a letter. So who's writing this letter? Who's it being written to? And what's the purpose of them writing? And so we dived into 1 John a little bit, and then Philippians we talked about as well. And so we kind of talked through those 3 questions for both of those letters, and then got to some application with the book of Philippians.
Absolutely. So if you answer those 3 questions, so this is kind of a takeaway for you guys. So who's writing this? Who is he writing to? And why is he writing this? And then that can lead you then to the application of how does this affect me today? And so we'll give them Philippians. So we want you guys to check it out because we do discuss this more in depth. We want to give a sneak peek and some helpful tips for you guys. And we'll put a link in this description. But for Philippians, we talked about one of the main things was, if you understand that Paul's writing to the church of Philippi, the city around there was obsessed with what?
Kind of this status or honor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they were much like America today. Yeah. They kind of wanted to gain not just money, and Mark made that point, but not just money, but they wanted kind of the status or standing amongst their peers and to be better than kind of everybody else.
Right, and then you understand the main section of Philippians 2:5-11, where it says that Jesus, being in the form of God, humbled himself to be a slave, and then by being obedient unto death, and then was exalted as Lord over all, who every knee will bow. So how Jesus gave up his honor, gave up his status. He, of course, didn't give up being God. He was always God, and always will be, but his status as God, the honor he had, he gave up to be a slave of all.
Yeah, which had to be totally crazy and countercultural to the people in Philippi, and really to us too, because then Paul tells us to take Jesus' example and run with it, to do the same. And so it's very similar. We can't just jump to the application in the epistles, but it's very similar to us today, that we should then become servants. We should be willing to lay our lives down for others.
Absolutely. So I hope you guys see how correctly interpreting the epistle changes the way you read it, and then changes the way you apply it to your own life. So make sure you check out our podcast, Wrestling with God, and we'll put a link in the description. God bless.